No, no, no. I absolutely strongly believe in a partisan space. I take a partisan view. I have a point of view. Never a neutral. What is neutral?
And can you expand on that a little?
Well, I do believe that if you're neutral, you can't be passionate. You have to have an ideology to be passionate about, or a cause to be passionate about. And I don't mean this in a propagandist way at all. I think that I've learned so much from anthropologists, social scientists, psychologists, psychoanalysts, that my whole endeavor is to make visible that which is invisible. It's my job as an artist.
One megaton explosion is all that is required to wipe out the largest city in the world. From the point of impact or ground zero to radius of 18 kilometers, fatalities will be almost total. The potential burnout areas will be as large as 1,000 square kilometers.
There is a part of us which is very attracted to death. And I'm not saying death in the form of annihilation of oneself or one's own mortality, but death of the species even. Otherwise, whatever is happening around us today wouldn't be happening. There would be a long-range thinking about destruction of the environment and testing of nuclear weapons and all those things. I mean, in the long run, this is all going to add up to something disastrous. So there is a death wish which we do not want to look at, but we are attracted to. We talk about phenomena. Oh my God, this is happening. Oh my God, that's happened. But why has it happened? Why is it that we did the nuclear tests in Pokhran? Why do we have this terrible animosity with our neighbors? That answer one can never get. One just knows that it happens. One knows the horror of it, but the answer to why never happens. And so I can only say that this is a death wish, and we are ultimately hurtling towards this extinction.
arising from wastes in the underground environment have not yet been carefully assessed. According to Eisenbad, the quantities of debris involved are huge, but objective evaluation of potential long-range risks has not been possible because little of the basic data have been made available. French underground testing in the Pacific poses a different set of problems to other underground test sites.
Since the sea is an integral part of the test site. At the time of the explosion, fracturing of the atmosphere in the penile site
things happen inside of you and outside of you, and there are things that are beyond your control. And one of the things that are beyond your control have to do with the environment. The kind of tests that were done in the Marshall Islands by the US, this was now sometime in the 50s, and I had read somewhere that the nuclear fallout had created such a devastation amongst the islanders that the children that were being born were like jelly babies. They just throbbed with life for a few hours and then they died. And the US then writes in a report, the US military writes in a report, that we did not even show these jelly babies to the mothers because we thought that would be very cruel. However, they did keep them in formaldehyde for future testing and so on. But this was it was a horrific fact.
सात समंदर घट भीतर सात समंदर याही में 9 लाख तारा
Bombay is my city. My work reflects Bombay very obviously because from the time one thing since I've started to work in Loharchal, which is about 25 years ago, it's become a sort of idée fixe that it should enter into my work in a way that is not romantic, not sentimental. It's sort of, to use Heiner Müller's text, a poverty with dignity. It wasn't in my concept of things to start using Loharchal as a subject from the very time that we started to live here. It was only when we moved out of Loharchal when our first child was born, and then when my father died, we had to come and live with my mother, who was all by herself. And at that time I then decided that this would be my studio. And this was about 22 years ago. It was then that I went around sketching on the streets actually at the time. After having done numerous sketches and drawings, almost like a riyaz, every day, 10 to 15 drawings, I would come back into the studio and not look at those drawings again, but try to recall from memory what I had experienced as I went around the area. It took quite a while to be able to find a form, to be able to in some way give dignity to the people that I was trying to paint and not make it look, in a sense, romanticized, not even descriptive. So I had all these not this in my head every time. I mean, I was extremely critical of the work I was doing, and it was about 5 years before I said, okay, now this is something that I'm quite happy with. And I think that was a moment when I perhaps had interiorized the visual language of Loharchal to some extent, and not romanticized it, not described it, but it was then part of my skin, and I could formulate in the visual language what I had wanted. Now to do that I had to go through many routes. One such route was Vinod Bihari Mukherjee, and it was then that I thought that here was a language that he had already developed, especially in the mural called Hindi Saints, which I could now appropriate. I wanted people to look at it and say, yes, of course, the Vinod Bihari line, but it's now Loharchal. But I've seen births take place, deaths take place, marriages take place. There's a whole life that goes on in the community. So it's been a long process, and so bit by bit, I was able to interiorize it and make it part of my physique, and my mental space before it could really come out as something that I could naturally deal with, and not look at it too much like the other. It is the other, of course it is, it'll always be, but I think that somewhere I found a way of bringing it in.
70s, I made the woman series, and in this series, the woman's body was shown in a tight close-up, as if she was pushed down. So she was supine. However, I realized that this was a very self-indulgent way of working, because the aggressor was not in view, and so I decided to change the lens and move her into a mid shot. So with this widened frame, there were other things that had to come in. I had to show the surroundings, and then I had to think about society and what that society was doing to women. When I started to make installations, in a sense, of course, it had to do so much with drama and so much with theatrical space and with creating environments that would engulf the spectator. However, one of the main elements would always be painting, whether it was Medea or The Job or A City of Desires. They all have painting and drawing elements in them. The idea of the spinal cord. Well, it came with Medea. On reading the text, the Euripides text as well as later the Heine Müller text, here we saw a woman who was an alchemist, a woman of wisdom in her own country called Colchis, which is actually present-day Georgia, I believe, and she, who is supposed to be the wise one, is treated as a barbarian in Corinth, in Greece, where she is taken by her husband Jason, and in a sense it broke her back. And that's why I chose the idea of the spinal cord. It's what really keeps you erect. It keeps you standing straight, and if your back is broken, it's all over. So in one sense it was really to do with that.
Reeds, dead branches. This tree will not outgrow gleam in the mud, biscuit boxes. Culture. Come, sweetie.
Medea came from Colchis, which is a country near Iran, and Jason was Corinthian, so the colonization process is from then onwards. So colonization and exploitation and using people and all that kind of thing is what Vidya was about.
There's so much in Western art history about the woman's back. It's as if the gaze on the back of the female is such that she is not aware of that gaze, and it's the male gaze on this back. It's almost as if she's constantly being deceived because this back is being exposed all the time. The back is vulnerable.
In the Medea story, there was one aspect which caught my imagination, and this aspect was to do with the fact that Medea, has to denigrate herself as a woman, almost annihilate herself as a woman in order to take this action of killing her own children. I think this was also the most difficult moment for us in the performance, as to what kind of form we could give that.
There's always this balance between Eros and Thanatos, and we all are struggling with this. This is what I said when I said try to make the invisible visible. In a sense, is to find form for this struggle between Eros and Thanatos in myself. In The Sacred and the Profane, which is the shadow play, when I started to work on it, I realized that it was very seductive, and I liked that. It brought the viewers in, and they were quite fascinated by the fact that there was the painted image which had a narrative element, and this cast a shadow. And what were these images? They were subterfuges from the epics, which now are considered almost holy by the Hindu fanatics. And in a sense, I wanted to turn this over on its head and bring back into Hinduism its playfulness. Majority of people believe that art should have nothing to do with politics or society or the economics. In fact, what people expect from art is something beautiful. I do believe that I could use beauty as a strategy to pull people into the environments that I make, and then let that unfold itself into many other registers.
या घट भीतर बाग बगीचे या ही में सिरजना कबीर सुनो भाई साधो, यही है गुरु हमारा, ढूंढे रे अंधियारा संता, ढूंढे रे अंधियारा, ढूंढे रे अंधियारा।